Hello, London's calling. Welcome to my talk, Small Changes Equal Big Gains. The importance of UX design for BAs, ICs, TCs, and everyone. I've already had a question, what do those stand for? Read that as admins, consultants, and developers. So hopefully this talk will go into a little bit of the importance of UX design and how everyone inside your company can do their own little bits to make a difference. This originally started out as an hour-and-a-half long talk, which I've had to whittle down to 25 minutes, so apologies if this goes light on some areas, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions afterwards. So, moving on to why you think I should be talking to you. Hi, I'm Doug. I've spent 13 years as a graphic designer and the last 7 years specialising in UX UI design. Out of university, I was hired by a media agency in Tunbridge Wells. We used to proudly tell everyone we worked with 33% of the high street, so I used to pretty much have daily interactions with all of those brands on the right-hand side that you see there, from dealing with actually B2B and B2C marketing. I would do web banners, website design, and pretty much every facet of corporate branding you can imagine, from sort of logo creation through to creating corporate identities, business cards, compliment slips, and just about everything else in between. The chances are if you had a gift card from Asda at some point, it would have come through our hands. For the last 3.5 years, though, I've been working for a company called Make Positive. We've had a few speakers today, including Ricky just before me here. So I've been working inside the Salesforce environment for the last 3.5 years. We are a platinum Salesforce consulting partner with over 1,000 successful project deliveries. We're the only ISV in Europe to win a Salesforce Innovation Award twice, a fact which we're rather proud of, as you can see by the small banner on the screen there. And we're also one of the few companies to have a dedicated practice lead team which focuses on managed services, marketing cloud, and XD. XD is the experience design team, which is the team that I sit within, and basically I am a technical consultant slash front-end developer, and I deal with everything front-end related, designing and building interfaces, emails and landing pages in Marketing Cloud, websites, mobile apps, and I have extensive history of building completely custom communities and components. So I've also personally myself had the good fortune to work with all those companies on screen there. The world's greatest football team, also Heston Blumenthal's triple Michelin-starred restaurant, The Fat Duck, designed a custom sort of Visualforce page app for Battersea Cat and Dogs, and the same for Unilever there. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of confidence that I know what I'm talking about. If not, these statistics should hopefully help me a little bit. So, Expedia found by asking one additional question and company name, they lost $12 million per year in revenue. This to me is a fantastic example of, sort of where UX can be employed by everyone. Most marketing departments want to know absolutely every single piece of information the second, they're sort of trying to get you to sign up to a newsletter. But as you can see here, just one additional question of asking a company name led to a massive drop-off, within the business. And this is what you need to ask yourselves. Is this question so essential that we can afford that drop-off? If no, well, you've got to remove it then. This next statistic is my favourite one of my talk. Amazon discovered that for every 100 milliseconds they sped their site up, the total site revenue increased by 1%, or $1.39 billion. I mean, this is just an incredible example of, not even that. It's such a minute difference, which has led to a huge sort of result for them. Or perhaps put a bit better, small changes equal big gains. Moving on to the next statistic, Unbounce, discovered by changing Start Your Free Trial to Start My Free Trial, led to a sign-up rate increase of 90%. I mean, this just goes to show you that personalizing a call to action can have a dramatic effect on your marketing results. And this isn't even some sort of, clever Salesforce personalization where it's pulling in field data with a client name or a company name or anything like that. Literally just changing the single word your to my leads to a huge increase. There was another statistic that was on here as well, where Betting Expert discovered just by personalizing their call to actions, they had a 32% increase in signups. I mean, these are huge changes for just very little effort. And you don't need to be a full-on graphic designer with years' experience. Everyone can be doing this. Last statistic, Forrester researched and found that for every dollar invested in UX brings $100 in return. As a designer, not that you have to justify your sort of skills and experience, but that goes to show you that if a company sort of invests within user experience, it brings a lot more in return. I mean, this is going to be my argument come my next pay review as to why I should be paid £1 million a year, but even without that, basically the benefits of being a design-driven company and how being user-focused can actually really pay off for everyone. And I think this is illustrated perfectly with this slide. So this is design-driven companies outperform the Standard & Poor's top 500 shares by 228% over 10 years. Hopefully we recognize some of those names, little mum and dad companies like Apple, Coca-Cola, Ford, Nike, Starbucks, Walt Disney. You know, I mean, if these industry giants are taking this approach and benefiting so much from it, why aren't we all doing this? You know, how do we get to do this? Fairly simply, there are many disciplines of UX, but the main 5 are psychology, usability, design, copywriting, and analysis. I mean, these can be sort of employed by, you know, a designer, but as we've sort of seen earlier in the earlier statistics, that just simple words and single small changes can actually lead to huge amounts of profitability and real business value. So let's go into some detail on some of these. Psychology. What do they expect when they click this? What habits are created if they do this over and over? How much work does the user have to do to get to what they want? As Ricky said before me, she designs things for her grandma. I design things for my mum. My mum is about the least technical person you can imagine. You can stick her on Amazon and she doesn't know where the basket is. She doesn't know how to buy something. And as someone that's almost grown up with computers, it seems almost incredible to be in that situation. But, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have some user come along at some stage that hasn't been there from the start since you've been building this. And as a sort of designer or an implementation consultant, you can start to get a sort of color blindness to it where you've seen it so often, you know, oh, I go to the top right-hand corner and I do this. But, you know, you've got to think about the first-time user. You've got to think about the first time someone's coming to your site and, you know, can they have the information that they need to succeed? I sort of saw it written online. A user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not that good. So, I mean, it's all the difference between conscious and subconscious choices. If you're having to make a conscious effort to look around your screen and find what you need to do next, then on some level you've failed. I mean, it's all about repeatable behaviors and letting the person solve things for themselves. Usability. Could you get this job done with less input from the user? This, as a UX designer, is about the most fundamental question you should be asking yourself on every single thing that you're doing. You know, I mean, does it need to have 4 steps to do this? Do you need to capture this information there? Is there any way that you can help the user by allowing them to pre-fill things or taking data which you've already captured from elsewhere? I mean, you know, sort of a lot of websites will have a massive sort of sign-up form, or when you get to the checkout stage, there'll be 100 fields on there. Can that be simplified? Can that be broken down into smaller segments? Can you make it even easier? Are you basing your decisions on your own logic or the user? Okay, don't stand there. Are you basing your decisions on your own logic or the user's intuition? You know, once again, just like I said, you know, you get a color blindness to it, especially as a designer. You spend 6 months or a year building something. You know exactly where everything is and you know exactly how to use it. You've got to think about the first-time user. Are there any user mistakes you could prevent? I mean, we all like to know we're sort of evolved to understand patterns and recognize patterns. So, I mean, you've got to think, can you make this in such a way that, you know, anyone picking this up can come and just find what they need? Is it easy to find, hard to miss, or subconsciously expected, which is the best? Just as I've been saying, you know, if user psychology is mostly subconscious, usability is mostly conscious. You want it to be just there. You just want people to understand it the second they pick it up. You also should be able to give your users some type of visual feedback on the page to let them know what they've done, like perhaps a help icon. I mean, we've got our Service Cloud, we've got all sorts of ways of talking to people live and stuff like that, but try and give the user their own chance to solve their own problems. Make it easy for them. Design. Now, I mean, as someone with a history in graphic design, I think most people think, oh, you know, what can I do about this? I don't know anything about it. But as we've seen earlier, tiny little changes from speeding up a page low speed to changing a single word can have huge results on your business. So this is where it more applies. I mean, it is absolutely function before form. It may look the most beautiful thing in the world, but if no one knows how to navigate it, if no one knows what they're supposed to be doing, then you've failed at the first hurdle. So absolutely, make it work first well, and then after that, make it look pretty. Do users think it looks good? Do they trust it immediately? This goes back to the first company I used to work for, where basically we came up with some sort of employee reward scheme, where basically as an external company, if you did well and your boss wanted to nominate you for a reward, we would then send you a sort of e-voucher online to spend money. But trying to give people free money from email online without them having ever heard of you before, it starts to seem like one of those sort of scams that you see online. So you've got to try and work out how can you sell this and how can you build faith within something. Does the design lead the user's eye to the right places? How do you know? Do the colors, shapes, and typography help people find what they want and improve usability of the details? Do clickable things look different than non-clickable things? This once again goes back to patterns and stuff like that. If you've got a red button on one page which is a cancel, on another page that's now the go, you're changing the goalpost. You know, people like to recognize patterns and be able to solve things themselves. Don't work against your end user. A good example. So on the right-hand side there, you can see, or barely see, that is a sort of wealth of information. Looking at that from there, you can probably hardly read it, but you can't easily discern the information within there. With minimal changes of size, weight, color, position, and type contrast, instantly you've elevated it to something that anyone can recognize. You know, at the top there you've got a title, so now instantly the first time you look at the page, you don't need to know anything about it, but you go on to the next page, and you know, if I'm looking for a black bold font at the top, that's going to be the title of something. If I'm looking in the second row and it's a green and it's like slightly italicized or something, that's the date. Instantly, you've already given your end user a visual cue which they can follow, so they can quicker get through the information on your site. And once again, you know, I mean, you don't have to be a 15-year graphic designer to be able to do this. Anyone can do this. Help your users. Copywriting. You know, I mean, most people here probably won't be involved with marketing, copywriting and stuff like that, but as we saw with just changing a call to action from your to my, I think we all know those words. I mean, hopefully, you know, anyone can do this. You just need to, I always sort of take the thing of what do you expect when you go onto a website, or what do other people do? You know, try and make yourself a little bit different. Try and help your end user. Is the biggest text the most important text? Why not? I mean, this goes back to what Ricky was saying about the analytics there. I mean, you can have the most beautiful font in the world, but if all your information is fighting each other on the screen, then, you know, you've failed in your user experience already. Is it clear, direct, simple, and functional? I mean, this is about the absolute most essential things. I mean, you can put a lot of personality and stuff, but at the end of the day, function has to be the absolute key thing you're aiming for here. Analysis. Are you using data to prove that you are right or to learn the truth? Are you looking for subjective opinions or objective facts? Have you collected information that can give you those types of answers? Are you looking for bad results too? Why not? I mean, this is going into sort of data-led analytics and stuff like that, but really, for me, once again, I just apply this to the first-time user. Can I, with absolutely no assumptions or understanding, pick this up and use this straight out of the box? I mean, analysis is the main thing that separates UX from other types of design. It makes you extremely valuable, and it literally pays to be good at it. So as I was saying, you know, you test your app on someone that's never seen it before. Can they use it? Can they perform the requested task? Do they need your help? If the answer to any of those is no, then you need to rethink your design. You know, just in case you're saying, how does this apply to me? I'm not a designer. Well, hopefully these next slides will answer that question. 7 must-have principles identified by InVision for any SaaS UX designer. Frictionless sign-ups, laser focus on your target audience, simple onboarding, very easy to use UI, personable, beautiful design, support is readily available. InVision are one of the world-leading prototyping companies, used by Salesforce, used by Airbnb, used by us, and they've done this research to point out, you know, what everyone should be able to do. So, looking at the first example, frictionless sign-ups. These can be short sign-up forms, clear call to actions, you know, personalizing things, just as we said. That can be pulling in Salesforce data like a name or a company name or something like that, but it can be just as simple as changing your to my. Making the sign-up workflow very simple, only essential questions asked. Once again, you saw a huge drop-off by asking one extra question like company name. You know, I mean, just because you think or your marketing department wants everything on that first question, make it easier for people. Laser focus on your target audience. So, I mean, at my last company, one of the greatest projects I was ever given was to target, I asked them, what was my target audience for this? To which they said, Facebook. You know, that is a platform which has over 2 billion users. So I just need to find something that applies to 1 in 5 people on the planet. And their attitude to things was actually, you know, if we target someone, then actually we're missing out on a load of business. But that's absolutely not the case. If you target everyone, you land on no one. You know, you need to identify as exact as possible your target audience. Ensure the product voice and tone are appropriate for your users. You know, I mean, going back to that example of Facebook there, you need to stand out by being exactly what your audience wants. You know, target your people and you'll be much more successful by targeting directly the people you're actually trying to help with this. Simple onboarding. Can your action be completed without long onboarding flows, tutorials, or user training? Can someone just pick this up and use it? Keep the user informed as to where they are with feedback. I mean, this is sort of a very classic example of when you're going through, and you'll see some slides later with sort of things around forms, but so often on forms, if you're giving someone, say they have to enter in a date, or they have to enter in a postcode, or a birth date, or something like that, you know, you need it in a certain format. Have you made it very clear to them that this is the format that they need to put it in? Have you put a placeholder in the box to give them an example? Have you given them clear feedback on the screen with an error message actually linking to the thing that they're trying to do, rather than just some sort of great big red X on the screen that just says, no, you've done it wrong? Very easy to use UI. Simplify interfaces and interactions. Use drag and drop where possible, tap and swipe functionality, and simple, clear call to actions. Make your main buttons prominent. If it's not the sort of, that's not the end goal for it, perhaps you don't have it next door to your main button, perhaps you have it somewhere else. Personable. Keep language on brand and professional, but include as much personality and feedback as possible. I think we've all seen in the last few years these very cool 404 pages that appear, and they have a little funny man on there or something like that saying, whoops, I can't find this or something. All of this is just an example of making you appear more like a person rather than some faceless corporation. Beautiful design. Once again, I believe this splits into two different areas. You have the most beautiful designs in the world, but once again, if it doesn't work, you've failed at the first hurdle. It's got to work first. So actually, I think beautiful design there is something which is extremely usable and clear at the same time. The two are not exclusive. Support is readily available. Allow users the facility to solve their own problems and keep help easily findable. You know, I mean, with sort of the apps and stuff that we build nowadays, there's so many sort of facilities in there to have, you know, a live chat on the screen. You can have your own PDF documents. You can have feedback messages with links to things. You can have community answers. You can have all sorts of things. But we like to solve things ourselves. You know, I mean, you shouldn't make things so difficult that people need that help. But if they do need that help, they should be able to find it easily and solve it themselves. Moving on. The 10 commandments of designing good forms for webs. Unfortunately, my image there is not coming out too well, but thou shalt provide clear, always visible labels for each field. Excellent. So as the gift goes through on the line there, hopefully, so basically in this first example here, you've got the text for the field names inside the box themselves, which while it may look pretty, when you actually get a sudden feedback error like there, you know, I'm on a postcode or a birth date or something like that, you don't know what you've gone wrong. All of a sudden your text field name has disappeared and you can't see where the error is. So give them, you know, put the labels outside, give them a placeholder example within the box so they know this is what I need to be doing here. 2, thou shalt use a big enough font size. We all love pretty small fonts, and these slides are failing miserably as a UX designer. But yeah, you know, sort of make it so it's reasonable. There's all sorts of accessibility issues in there, and you've got to design for everyone. You know, someone coming to your site might not have full 20/20 vision. Someone might be harder seeing. All these things, you know, I mean, this can then link into the titles that you give things, so then a screen reader can give things out. But you should be helping people as much as I can by, you know, giving a big font so they can actually read it in the first place, unlike these slides. Thou shalt provide easily tappable areas. As someone with rather pudgy fingers myself, you know, I don't want to just mash the screen and randomly hit the wrong boxes, so spread it out a little bit more. It's advised, in fact, that the sort of touch area for a standard finger should be something around 40 by 40 pixels. So give your users enough room. Assume if they're using this on mobile, have they got enough room to press the correct field? 4, thou shalt size the input fields according to their expected input. You can't see them at all on screen there, so excellent example again. But in the first example, these are going the full width of the screen. But if all you're looking for is a house number there, why not just give them a small little box, giving little visual clues to let them understand, actually, this is what I need to do. You know, I mean, it's not breaking the design, it's giving your user more feedback. Thou shalt not customize checkboxes and radio buttons. As a front-end developer, I can assure you this is nearly impossible because of the vast majority of browsers, especially the delightful Internet Explorer, which will strip away any styling that you add to these things. So, I mean, people have expected behaviors. A checkbox should pretty much be an either-or. A radio button should be either-or, and a checkbox could be multiple. Just because you want something funky in your design, are you working against your end users here? 6, thou shalt provide both a general error message and a field-specific one. So in the first example here, well, that's the conclusion, but in the first example, you will see that someone's done something wrong, and in the example, they've just put a great big red box up over it, and no one's got any clue. But you can actually give them a personalized feedback message. Let them know where the error is. You know, I mean, so many CSS things nowadays, you can just put a little red box around it, let them know which field is incorrect, and then you can actually put a message which is directly related to them to let them know what they've done wrong. 7, thou shalt make it clear what is optional and what is not. You know, as we saw in the first example, just by asking one extra question of company name led to like a $12 million loss in revenue for Expedia. If all it has to be is the difference between an essential field and a non-essential field, then, you know, make it obvious to your end users that this isn't essential. Keep it easy for them. Thou shalt hide what is not needed until it is needed. And this is a fantastic example, again, of not making our users fill out loads of unnecessary information. This is a very common thing which you now see on websites, that 9 times out of 10, the billing and shipping address are probably the same. So just have a little box down there, same as billing. You've instantly saved your end users from having to enter in 3 extra fields. They will thank you for it. Thou shalt minimize user input. I mean, sort of once again here, think about it. Can you sort of preload any information which you've already captured? Can you capture that information anywhere else in an easier way? You know, I mean, there's all sorts of conversational UIs now where they can ask things as you go. Slack is a fantastic example where it just gives you a simple onboarding UI at the start of it with a chat bot, and off the back of that, they get your username, they get all your preferences and stuff like that. Can it be done cleverer? 10. Thou shalt be clear what type of input is expected. Once again, I mean, this goes back again to the sort of thing I was talking about, and you absolutely can't see it on screen apart from barely, but there's placeholder text within the second example, letting your end users know what is expected of them. You know, keep it simple, stupid, as they say. And finally, in summary, companies which focus on UX are more profitable, retain more users, have more productive and happier teams, and attract more business. We saw that within the first few statistics which I showed, so hopefully we can take that as a fact. If you can speed up one member of your internal team's workload by 10 minutes per day by small actions and improving usability, this equates to an entire week of extra work for free annually. In a team of 52 people, this is the equivalent of hiring 1 extra staff member for free just by reducing inefficiencies. By making tiny changes from personalizing a call to action, speeding up a page load, removing waste in forms can lead to huge improvements in profitability and real business value. Or perhaps put more succinctly, small changes equals big gains. Thank you. So I shall take any questions. Hopefully there are.